City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded August 1st, 2022.
I have 6 o'clock. I will call the regular City Plan Commission meeting to order. Director, do you want to call the roll?
Weeza.
Here.
Kneebone.
Here.
Arnson.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Ilton.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Schuler.
Here.
7-0.
Full vote today. All right. Item number 2 is a report from the July 5th meeting of the City Plan Commission. Those minutes were included in your packet.
Move approval.
Moved by Cooper.
Second.
Seconded by Schuler. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And that's approved. Item number 3 is a request from Mark and Janice Klein for the purpose of annexing the property located at 5410 Windy Drive with a parcel identified in your packet from the town of Hull to the City of Stevens Point. Director.
Before you tonight is a request from the Klein family for annexing 5410 Windy Drive with the parcel identified within the agenda packet. This is a request for annexation by unanimous consent, meaning that the property owner has petitioned the city for the annexation. The main purpose of the annexation is to hook into city water and sewer. As we annex properties that are adjacent to and city sewer and water, let me back up. The county will not issue permits for sewer or well systems if they are adjacent to a municipal utility. And this is the case in which the property owners went in to receive a new, I believe, septic permit. The county did not issue the permit because they were adjacent to. We don't typically allow folks to hook into city sewer and water unless they annex. There are very special circumstances where we would provide an exemption, but this is a fairly straightforward annexation. They are directly contiguous with the city's municipal boundary on the north and east end of the property. As part of the annexation, the Klein's property will be coming in, but also will be taking all of the Windy Drive right-of-way in front of the Klein property and half of the Sandy Lane right-of-way to the west of the Klein property. That's better defined on page 18 within your agenda packet. Purpose of that is the city already maintains Windy Drive and Sandy Lane. We do plow those streets as part of our regular system, and so it made sense as part of the annexation to take those in as well. The request has been submitted to the State Department of Administration for their initial review. So typically after the Plan Commission makes a recommendation, the next step would be for council to take action. Council can only take action after the DOA has submitted their essentially letter of confirming whether or not they believe the annexation is consistent with Chapter 62. So my conversations with our annexation specialist at the DOA seems to indicate that they have no immediate objections, but will receive the formal letter, and that's when the council can take action. That will likely happen before the August 15th meeting of the Common Council. So the Kleins are here as well, but staff's recommendation is to approve as presented. More than happy to answer any other questions that this committee may have.
We'll go with Arnson.
That's a new one to me, and this may be a question for the county, or maybe Jeff might weigh in on it, but I didn't know that if you are adjacent to a municipality that has sewer and water, the county will not issue permits for sewer, for septic.
If you have to be to the utilities.
The utility has to be in the right of way in order to not receive a permit for a septic or well from the county. So in this case, there's utilities in Windy Drive.
Just because it abuts the city, we have areas where the utilities haven't been run yet.
Oh, all right.
So those would not fall under this. But if there are utilities adjacent to that property,
all right,
then they are required to connect to municipal sewer and water, just protecting, groundwater.
Right. No, it kind of makes sense. I didn't know that. But then the annexation kind of is not necessarily a requirement, but kind of a requirement. And what does the town of Hull say about that?
It's a requirement. It's been the policy of the city to require annexation if they are contiguous. There are some instances and utilities. There are some instances like on Country Club Drive where there is a new house put in. The city is not contiguous with that specific property, so the Utilities Commission entered into what's called a deferred annexation agreement, where we will, because there's sewer and water in Country Club Drive, the county wouldn't issue that particular house a well or septic permit, but they weren't contiguous with the city of Stevens Point, so we allowed them to hook into city sewer and water, and then essentially came to an agreement that said, if and when the city is now contiguous with your property, we can take your property into the city as part of a previously established agreement.
All right, very good. I
guess also it's primarily a property owner-driven request. So it's not a city with the town, it's the property owner requesting to come in, and the city is the.
Correct.
All right,
entity
right,
that-
and the town doesn't really have anything to say about it, really.
Correct.
Right. Generally.
They may
They
have
can
something to say,
object, but
but
it doesn't mean a
right.
whole lot when the property owner's asking for it.
And the state reviews if it meets their criteria for reasonable annexation.
All right. Huh, good, thanks. New
All
to
right,
me.
we're gonna go to Mr. Schuler, who no longer works for Portage County.
I just wanted to say I appreciated the clarity of the written materials for the meeting tonight. It was very informative.
Okay. Commissioner Elton?
Am I correct in assuming from the map on page 11 that the property to the north of this parcel and also to the east is city-owned?
They're not city-owned,
Not
but
city-owned,
they're,
but
they're within the city's municipal boundary,
Okay,
correct?
and then to the west and south is Town of Hull?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay,
You'll find several things like that if you look at the city map.
I'm sure
There's-
I
yeah.
have already on occasion, but I just wanted to make sure.
So the property south of the Klein's property, same situation. If they were to go into the county, try to get a permit to put a new sanitary system in, the county would say, no, you're adjacent to municipal utilities, you need to go see the city of Stevens Point. Then they come to see Joel Lemke and I, where we say, yes, we will allow you to hook into city utilities, however, you must annex as part of hooking into the utilities. And so at that point, we would take in that property to the south and the remaining right-of-way, and then it's essentially a slow process to clean up these municipal boundaries that get a little dicey in this area.
Was refuse pickup provided to this parcel by Town of Hull?
Yes,
And that'll change?
yes.
Correct. Yep, so as part of the annexation, they'll receive city garbage collection, garbage cans as well.
Need a motion.
I would move approval of the request as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Elton. Discussion now.
Mayor, I just want to say I'm very well aware of this property from, it's close to where I live and from campaigning in the neighborhood. So I would just like to welcome them into District 7, lucky number 7, the best part of Stevens Point.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, if you're in favor, vote, well, let's see, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 4 is a request from Robert Opiola for a sign, that sounds weird, for a sign variance to install a freestanding sign on the property located at 106th Avenue, consistent with Chapter 25.14. This is Cub-Manchesky Field, and Adam's gonna take care of it?
Yep,
Yes.
I will do this.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So if you can go next 2 slides, you can see the image of the proposed sign display. So the top left shows just one of those 2 panels, what it'll look like with each individual sign displays that's available for sale for advertisement. The intent of this proposed signage is for accumulating funds for an eventual lighting display improvement for Cub-Manchesky Field. So the lower left-hand portion of the screen shows the sign display in its entirety, whereas the image to the right shows the proposed location of the sign relative to Cub-Manchesky Field and relative to the broader subject parcel, including the baseball field, public garage, city garage, and Buchholz Park. So there's a couple things that staff looks at as far as the variance request is concerned. But before I get to that, I'll just quick skim through the specs on the proposed signage. So you can see proposed sign is 30 feet in height, and each of the sign displays exceeds 1,000 square feet in height, which is fairly significant in terms of size. There's a couple things that staff looks at in terms of a variance request relative to this property. First of which, per our sign code, this property would be allowed one freestanding sign at no more than 32 square feet in size. There's already multiple freestanding signs located on the subject parcel, more so affiliated with the park. So part of the ask by the applicant is allowing for one additional freestanding sign beyond the maximum that's allowed. Second would be exceeding the height and the size requirement, and this really comes into play more so based off of the intended use. As I said, subject property being zone conservancy, you're allowed 32 square feet in freestanding sign size. For baseball type uses like this, for sports venues, generally someone would need more than 32 square feet in size for a sign. So that's why staff is generally in support of this. Likewise, location, they do meet the minimum 5-foot setback from the south lot line. Now, given there is additional landscaping, it is somewhat close to the surrounding single-family residential homes to the south. There is ample room should the commission choose to require additional setback. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it if you would want to have more than 5 feet of setback.
Well, this will be in front of the trees anyway.
Correct.
The trees are acting as a buffer for that southern property line
Correct.
anyway.
So ultimately, staff would recommend approval, and the applicant is here in person as well.
Okay, commissioners, thoughts, comments, or motion?
I'll move approval subject to staff recommendations.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
We'll give the Commissioner Rice the second. Discussion?
Yeah, I guess I was just looking for a little more details on those setbacks and yeah, I guess to confirm whether or not those, looks like the trees are part of the park property. I assume those are not going to have to be removed or trimmed.
Correct.
And I assume that the signage is relatively, going to be relatively close to the fence. And I guess also just want to confirm some assumptions. This is going to be, yeah, essentially north facing, right? So
Correct,
it's
north facing.
parallel to the fence and north facing.
Correct. And you're right, I mean, there might be some minor branch trimming, but we'll make sure our forester's involved if there is any tree trimming requirements for the construction of the sign. After it's constructed, I don't think there'll be any issues. Commissioner Ilden?
Do the trees exceed the height of this sign?
I can't
Generally
answer that.
speaking?
I think they're all gonna be higher. At least a majority of them will be higher.
So there is some screening of the sign?
Yeah, the signs will be screened from the south, property to the south. So they'll see trees, they won't see the back of a sign. I mean, through the trees, you'll probably be able to spot it, but it's not gonna be like you're looking at the back of a sign, you know, your whole life. Commissioner Artson?
What is gonna be on the back of the sign? Is it gonna be painted? Is it particle board? Is it?
Well, I would imagine you would see the steel beams running up that support the sign, and there won't be like a mural or something.
Maybe a project later on.
It'll look like the back of a sign.
All right. Would it be, yeah, painted brown, painted green, painted something?
don't
Not
know.
painted pink, I assume?
Mr. Opiola, do you want to come up to the lectern and if you know, let us know. I mean, I'm sure we could paint it black or green or probably not pink.
Yeah, correct. We'll just make it as neutral as possible. If you want it green, we can make it green, otherwise
I
black
think
would
green is
probably
probably
be
the most
standard.
appropriate, given the pine trees that are going to be in front of it. Or
Sure.
in front of that view.
Yeah, or if we just put it up and then we needed to paint it, we can certainly do that if the city would require that also.
Mr. Schuler?
A question, I think, Adam, you said there's maybe 25 feet between the fence and the edge of the property?
Correct.
Is there any advantage or disadvantage to anywhere you might locate within that 25 feet? I
We're
know
gonna
the
want to
minimum
keep
is-
it as close to the fence as possible.
Okay,
The
So,
furthest away from the property line.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just wanted to confirm that, thank you.
absolutely.
If it hits the sign, does that count as a home run?
It will not. Oh, yes, it will. Yes, it will. Yes,
say,
yes, yes, it's not that.
I don't know what kind of
Yes, it
baseball you
will.
watch.
It's not gonna be that
Get it off
close.
the sign, come on, it's the green monster.
Put a bullseye on it, right?
Mr. Tilton.
Just from the engineering perspective of this is a big sign. I assume we're gonna have this beefily supported so that
Yep,
it just
they take
doesn't
into
blow
account
over.
wind load and everything,
All
yes.
right.
Anything else? Mr. Rice?
Yeah, I guess the only other question I had was, is this signage lit at all, spot lit or otherwise?
It will not. Our new lighting will have a light shining towards it, but it's not gonna have its own freestanding light.
And that's only gonna be when the field is being used.
Absolutely.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Got everything? All right, if you, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any
I,
opposed? And that is approved. And at Cub Manchesky Field, I think it's August 13th, Horseshoes and Hand Grenades is gonna be doing a live concert event at Cub Manchesky Field, our own Shea Stadium, if you will. And I believe that is August 13th. There you go. Item number 5 is discussion on amendments to the city sign code. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So if you go in the next couple of slides, run back. There we go. So in 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a pretty significant ruling in regards to signage and freedom of speech. In Reed v. Gilbert, essentially the brunt of that case, it mandated that municipalities cannot enforce signage based off of a content-based administration. It has to be content neutral in how you administer signs. So a good example would be you see a sign in your front yard that says John Doe for president. You know, how our sign code is currently structured, you have to look at the sign, you have to read the sign to determine that it's a political sign and determine what sign regulations apply. The purpose of Reed v. Gilbert is to have municipalities have a content neutral sign code, meaning you can look at the sign, the John Doe for president sign, not even read it to know right away what type of regulations come into play. So again, since 2015, municipalities across the country have been amending their sign codes reflective of this ruling. The city, unfortunately, since 2015 has not had a significant revamp of our sign code until now. So the purpose of this agenda item is more so to present a preliminary sign code amendment and to gather your thoughts, your opinions, and determine next steps. So just a summary of the proposed amendments. It's pretty extensive in terms of pages, but summary is primarily amending definitions for all of these words outlined in the sign code, really to make it content neutral, not make it content based. Going in specific, there are a couple new definitions added, more so related to yard signs, related to vehicle signs. One of the predicaments in Reed v. Gilbert was how the town of Gilbert, Arizona administered temporary signage, specifically having specific requirements for temporary signs of a special commercial event. So since our sign code has a similar administration to what town of Gilbert had a few years back, this amendment would also revise our temporary sign definition to reflect that.
Don't you have to read the sign to determine if it's temporary or not?
So temporary would be the time length, the length of time that sign would be, not.
So
Without
essentially,
reading the content, you don't know if it's temporary.
and this is where we get into the challenges of Reed v. Gilbert, right?
Yeah.
So if you have to read the sign to regulate it, you're in violation. But you can regulate things like location, duration, and size. And that's what we're trying to achieve through, and amount.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to achieve through the amendment, which we've been doing in concert with the Village of Plover. So for those who don't know, 30 years ago, when the village and the city adopted a universal sign ordinance, when we were going back to rewrite ours, we invited the village to be part of that, so that, you know, it doesn't matter if you're in the village or the city, the sign code is relatively similar, so that there isn't massive changes with putting up a temporary sign in the city of Stevens Point as opposed to the village of Plover, so.
Yeah, but otherwise, some of the spark notes of these proposed amendments, as the director said, amending our temporary sign requirements, doing some tweaks to our off-premise sign regulations, and that is one of the exceptions as well through case law post-read that allows our administration of off-premise signs to be content-based. That was actually just ruled this past April. Likewise, doing some tweaks to architectural aesthetic requirements in the B3 district, and then tweaks to the identity sign requirements. So again, this is about 30 pages of edits, so I'd be happy to hear any comments, questions, concerns that you have, and then take it from there.
Okay, and we are not looking for action on this tonight. Just taking feedback. Commissioner Schuler, you had your hand up?
Yeah, a couple of things. Do all of the, remind me, new guy again, in terms of permitting for the signs, are all of the signs described required to have permits? Or are there some that do not require?
There are some that do not. I can pull you the exact page number in our packet. These would be...
Do minor signs require a permit?
Minor signs would not. So if you look on page 56 of the agenda packet, the striked out version, the striked out sentences would be the current signs that do not require a permit, directional signs, holiday decorations, incidental signs, construction signs. The sentences above that would be the proposed signs that do not require a permit, which is pretty reflective of how we currently administer that.
So it says minor signs under that, and then if you go to page 46, I believe, it outlines all the minor signs, or the requirements for minor signage within the ordinance. I'm sorry, 43. So subsection G, which within being read compliant says, like, as an example, John Doe for president, we can't look at that to say this is a political sign, but we know that it's under, I think it's 10 square feet or 32 square feet, ergo there's no need for a permit. It's out of the right of way, they can keep that specific sign up for as long as they want. And this becomes, especially political signage, a big complaint that the city receives, especially post-elections. People will leave their political signage up year-round, it seems like these days. And so we have deliberately not been enforcing that component of our current code because it's not consistent with the Supreme Court ruling. So this helps clarify that and clear it up for the administrative staff.
Adam and I had talked about this earlier today, that the 10 square feet seems too small for a lot of the signs.
The 10 square feet would be for the for rent, the for lease. So
Right.
technically,
But the political signs,
the political signs would be, so
many of the ones that I've seen are like 4 foot by 4 foot. I've seen 4 foot by 8 foot, which all would be greater than that 10 feet.
yeah, so the initial draft would say on a non-election season, you can have one sign not exceeding 4 square feet in size. You can have no more than 2 yard signs per lot, provided that the cumulative size, this would be subsection 3, that the cumulative size does not exceed 12 square feet. So you can have 2 yard signs, provided the size amongst the both of them don't add up to exceed 12 square feet. During the election season, so the subsection 6 is when the number that's allowed, the cumulative square footage that's allowed, and the square footage for the max yard sign does increase. So it does reflect that.
Well, it says cumulative not exceeding 36 square feet, but no individual yard sign may exceed 6 square feet in size.
Correct. So during a non-election season,
How
the
do we
max
determine
size.
the election season?
So 30 days prior to an election, 30 days prior to the election date, and then 14 days after the election is held.
So let me ask you this. We've got a primary coming up on August 9th.
Correct.
Signs have been up for more than 30 days prior to August 9th. However,
Correct.
some of those candidates are going to win the primary, and the actual election isn't until November.
Correct.
If we were to pass this now, they'd be required to take those signs down and put them back up in October.
Correct.
That
And we
doesn't
can
make sense.
definitely, I mean, I'm not opposed to obviously amending the 30-day. It can be an arbitrary number, whatever.
Yeah, no,
you
but,
see
I agree with you that the signs that stay up year-round are not appropriate. However, we need quite a bit more latitude, I think, because with a primary like this, we've got state, local, and federal primaries going on. Many of the residents support a candidate in each of those races, which might mean they have 2 or 3 or even more signs that may be as big as 4x4. All of those things would be in violation if we approve this as is. So that's the part I think needs the most work. The garage sales, lemonade stand signs, I don't think anybody has a problem with those. The biggest issue that I get complaints on is signs within the right-of-way. And we periodically have our community service officers go pick up those signs. If we can determine who owns them, we contact the owner, inform them that signs in the right-of-way are not allowed, and they can come get their signs here at the police department generally. Those are the bigger issues, I think, rather than the the lemonade still saying garage sales, come out and support X event. Like, I don't know, Horseshoes and Hand Grenades is playing at Cub Manchesky Field on August 13th. See, I got a second plug in there. Someone could put a sign up for that. I think generally 2 weeks or maybe even a month before the event and 2 weeks after the event, that's acceptable. But with elections, it becomes trickier because you may have a runoff. And it certainly doesn't make sense to require them to take signs down and then put them up a couple weeks later, just because of the way we write this. So that one needs some work.
Yeah, and even reading it, I think it might dip into being not read compliant because, I mean, how do you know that it's a sign that's for a local, state, federal election? Well, you have to read it in order to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you should be up on who's running.
Yeah, well, and that's, so there are, I mean, even the minor signs, there's probably some things that we can still tweak on. But this is kind of the first pass, and I would encourage the commission to review. We don't have to duke everything out now, but provide written comment to Adam and I, before the next round of meetings. And much like the accessory dwelling unit and other ordinance changes, we'll work through it kind of piece by piece as we hopefully will have a fully completed rewrite to you by the end of the year. So,
And I would say it's not just the commissioners, everybody has an opportunity. Those people watching later or listening at home, the proposal is on our website under the Plan Commission's agenda for this evening's meeting. Take a look at it, provide that feedback to our Community Development Department, and as we move through this, we'll take those into consideration. Commissioner Schuler.
Just a general question for staff. Were you happy with the amount of references you found to help understand the changes that other people have been made, and what was the hardest part of the code that you had to deal with to try to get to this draft?
Hardest part was honestly the yard signs, because a lot of communities have different administration of it post-read. So trying to find that balance of, as the mayor mentioned, being flexible with how many yard signs you can have within a lot, but also addressing the need not to have a proliferation of signs within any one yard. So I think trying to find that balance is going to be the tricky part.
Yeah, and I've seen houses because of the election season where, you might have 8 signs in your yard unless you're Shoe Sullivan, and then you got 14. They took them down. Right?
at least 14. Yeah. Yeah, and that's been, in APA, American Planning Association has put out, draft ordinances, but the challenge is that every community is a little different, and how we regulate it and how we look at things is just a little bit more unique than even, Gilbert, Arizona, as an example, so.
Commissioner Hartson.
Maybe a little bit more clarification on the content neutral versus the content based. It sounds like we're talking about political signs, and those would be content based. And I guess, could you explain that a little bit more? It seemed like content based, you can kind of circumvent things by just keeping your signs small and maybe temporary. Where does the content neutral come in terms of a definitive practice?
Good question. So to give an example, our temporary sign regulations currently say that if a new business opens, you're allowed to have an unlimited number of temporary signs for a period not exceeding 45 days. You know, under that interpretation, that would be content-based because you have to know that the requested signs that are being installed are in relation to a new business that's being, that's going to open up on the property.
And so those would be limited in size? Is the content-based aspect a size or a time?
Content-based would be more so reviewing the message that's being displayed on the sign and tying that into a service, a product, a business that is located on that same lot.
The sign says grand opening. Our current code would say, okay, you can leave those signs up for 45 days because it says grand opening. So we have to read the sign in order to effectively apply the code, which isn't consistent with what Reed v. Town of Gilbert says in the state Supreme Court, or the U.S. Supreme Court ruling. We can, however, say, you know, you can have a 30 square foot sign that's temporary in nature for 45 days, 5 feet off the right-of-way line. Now you can do
Respective of purpose.
Yep, for whatever purpose, whether it's a grand opening, you know, what we don't want to do is have to read the sign in order to apply the code. But again, as I mentioned earlier, size, duration, location seem to be where municipalities are taking advantage of the Reed case, but that's all we can look at when applying our sign code. If this has been a huge wrench in the gears of sign ordinances, and there's a reason that most municipalities haven't even touched their sign code to become Reed compliant.
Good, yeah, it's a new one on me, so learning all kinds of stuff tonight.
Well, then feel free to take some time. Read through it. Think about the signs you see, what we want to encourage, what we want to discourage, and provide that feedback to the Community Development Department, so as we rewrite this, they'll have that input.
Think about ways to pervert the process, huh? Just to,
Something like that.
all right,
Does-
I can do that.
Does staff specifically reach out to our friends in the advertising business, the outdoor advertising business, and alert them to the fact that we're doing this, or are they just expected to pick up on this through the normal course of?
Well, no, generally, because we don't know where, I mean, they may order signs from a company in California, but generally, there's going to be some sort of media that would cover something like this, but really, it's the responsibility of that sign owner to be compliant.
Sure.
Okay. As I said, if you have feedback, take a look at the edits, provide feedback, and we will bring this back at a later date for some further consideration. Item number 6 is the June 2022 monthly report. Director?
Overall, a fairly decent month. Declared valuations for the Banter Apartments, which is the Division Street project. The HVAC permit was issued. Footing foundations for Tommy's Car Wash on Division Street was also issued. There wasn't a declared value because typically footings foundation is part of the overall building permit. We actually just got their state approved plans, I think, today. So we should be receiving the full permit from that. 1-2 family structure permits pulled on Doolittle Drive, and then the plumbing permit, Great Northern Distilling, was also issued. The state review for Great Northern is actually occurring tomorrow, so I would expect that we'll issue the full permit tomorrow. So that would mean the August report will look even better. Overall, our year-to-date permits are up compared to the last few years, and our valuation is up compared to last year in 2019. So overall, very happy with how things are looking. A lot of permits, which is really good. Our inspectors have been very busy, which is even better. So,
Excellent. Questions? All right, we'll move along to the director's report, item number 7.
in your packet is the written director's report. Pretty much things are smooth along. So overall, very happy with the progress that we're making on a number of our major developments, including the Point Motel site, Banter Apartments Division Street, as it's now being called. The second floor is currently being, I'm sorry, the third floor now is being framed in. So even within the last week that I wrote this, they went up another story. So the North Side Yard, probably the biggest news there is the third building should begin work in August. That'll be the 3-story apartment building along 3rd Street. Convent is also coming along really well. We have a pre-construction meeting this week on the Union Street extension. The plan is to get utilities in the right-of-way to get to the townhomes that are along the north property line this year, and then we'll finish the road likely next year for that Union Street extension. So more than happy to answer any other questions folks might have within this document. The only one other thing I'd like to point out is our Washington/Gerke Park neighborhood block party is scheduled for September 18th. And all neighborhood surveys as part of the comprehensive plan process are currently open. Please encourage residents, your neighbors, your friends, your family, pets to take that survey because it's going to help us kind of guide our neighborhood area planning into the future as we work through that process. So,
Excellent. Any questions on the director's report? Okay. With that, our agenda is exhausted, and we are adjourned at 6:36. Thank you very much.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.